Welcome to La Vida Las Vegas podcast. We're two physical therapists living the life in Las Vegas. I'm Dr. Erica.
And I'm Dr. Joe. We created this podcast for two reasons. First, to connect the healthcare, wellness, and fitness communities in Las Vegas. And second, to highlight all the amazing people we've met along the way.
Thank you for listening, and remember to take care of yourself.
Katie Mullen is a physical therapist and PT team leader at Encompass Health Rehab of Henderson. She was born and raised in Henderson, Nevada, and earned her DPT from Northern Arizona University in Flagstaff. Although she was first inspired to become a PT in the outpatient ortho setting, Katie found her true love to be working with older adults, particularly in inpatient rehab. Always looking to do more, Katie is currently pursuing her certification to become a Pilates instructor.
Welcome, Katie, to La Vida Las Vegas podcast. We're really excited to have you here.
Thank you so much. I'm so excited to be here.
All right, so we're going to get into it first. Why Las Vegas?
So I was born and raised in Henderson. So one of the few that grew up here, and I went away to school and I loved my experience. I lived in Nebraska for 4 years. I lived in Arizona for 2 years. So this is home, definitely. So glad to be back and to be practicing here and serving this community.
What was it like growing up in Henderson?
So it's funny, I get that question all the time. And I feel like it's like when someone asks a twin, like, what's it like to be a twin? And you're like, I don't know, this is just my life. But I will say that I didn't realize how great it was to grow up in Henderson or the Las Vegas area until I went to school in Nebraska and I tried to go get ice cream at 8 o'clock at night, and that just did not happen. Everything closes everywhere else. So you grow up being so accustomed to things being open and available and slot machines everywhere. So when I lived in the Midwest, they used to say, do they sell alcohol at your gas station? Yeah. So yeah, I love this town though. Henderson's great. Vegas is great. I think it's an awesome place, and I'm a proud native for sure.
So where were you when your 21st birthday then, if you...
I was in Omaha, Nebraska. And so I was an RA at the time, and I remember we had an RA meeting that went till 8 o'clock at night. So we found the one restaurant that was still open, because in other places you can't get into a bar if you're not 21. So some of my
Was it
friends
Denny's?
were, so we found... No, it wasn't Denny's.
Oh.
If we had a Denny's, it probably would have been a Denny's. But yeah, so we found the one restaurant, and I had a half of a margarita, and I was like, I can't handle this. But when I came home for Thanksgiving break, I went to the piano bar in New York to celebrate my 21st. That was my big thing.
Oh, excellent. So how do you like to spend your time in Las Vegas? Or Henderson, either way.
Yeah. I mostly, right now I'm spending a lot of time at home, because aren't we all? So I like being in the pool. I've got a mini Australian Shepherd, so I spend a lot of time with her and my boyfriend. And when it's not terribly hot out, we love to go hiking and walking, even just walking outside in our neighborhood. We just live in such a beautiful place. Like Nevada, Southern Nevada is so beautiful. And I think for people who haven't really been anywhere outside the strip, they don't necessarily know that, but either going to Red Rock or going to the lake. And then my parents still live here, so I spend a lot of time with them. And when hockey happens, we go to hockey games. So yeah, every once in a while we'll go like out on the town, but mostly just kind of hanging out at home, doing that kind of stuff.
What are your favorite hikes?
Icebox Canyon is my favorite. Hands down my favorite. I also like the railroad one in Boulder City, which I can't think of the exact name of it, but it's the tunnels out there. Mm-hmm. So it just like nice lake views out there. But yeah, Icebox is definitely fun.
Icebox Canyon is a good one because in the summertime it is a little bit cooler. So that's why I think, hence the name Icebox Canyon.
Yeah.
But it's mostly shaded. I'd say the most of that trail is shaded, so you can stay cool in the summertime. But in the wintertime, it gets very cold. So just FYI, if you are going.
I did it in like February, which here is like spring, obviously. So it's like kind of in the middle. But yeah, I would imagine, because it is super shaded, that it'd be chilly out there.
When you were growing up in Vegas, and then going back to Nebraska, or like different parts of the the state, what would you appreciate like or miss when you went to another state and then came back home and like, man, I really wish I had this?
So, okay, people told me that I was crazy about this, but it's the mountains. And Nevada is the most mountainous state, if people didn't know that. It's not Colorado. Everyone thinks it's Colorado, but it's Nevada. And so not having the mountains like you do out here, it's just, I just love them. And also seeing the city. Every time I see Vegas, I think, oh, this is my town. And I just love that. So that was probably just that feel that you have when you're here. But even when I lived in Arizona and we had mountains, I was in northern Arizona, just when you drive back and you kind of hit the area where it's by the lake and the mountains look all purple, like I love that.
Any particular restaurants or things that you missed when you're away from Las Vegas?
Oh, that's a good one. So I'm gluten intolerant, so I'm not like the best restaurant person. But Settabello's Pizza, because they have the best gluten-free pizza crust, was my big thing that I always hit up when I came home.
You always got to have that thing, when you're at home, you're like, I have to do this, or I want my parents to make whatever food that you have that nostalgia with.
Yes, definitely. And like just having having your parents take you to go get like Starbucks coffee because you're like too poor when you're in college to do it. You're just like, I just gotta go to Starbucks.
Or ice cream at 8 o'clock at night.
Exactly. Or Cold Stone anytime I want.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of food, what is your favorite cheat meal?
Ooh. Okay, before I was gluten intolerant, it was probably chicken fingers with honey mustard, particularly from Applebee's.
Oh, from
Very
Applebee's.
classy.
Okay.
Very classy.
Fancy.
But
neighborhood grill.
yeah. Now it's probably pizza. Like once I have found that great gluten-free crust, yeah, it's pizza for me for sure. And French fries on the side with ranch.
I like it. You have it.
I very rarely live it myself.
Tell us a little bit more about what you do, Katie.
So I am currently the physical therapy team leader at Encompass. So I'm an inpatient rehab therapist, and I've been doing that for 2.5 years now, which isn't that long, but it went by so fast. It's so crazy that it's been that long to me. And I recently just earned my GCS. So my big passions are working with the geriatric population and particularly treating patients with Parkinson's and dementia, and just kind of upping what people think of when they think of quality of life when they're older.
So what's the GCS for people that don't know what that is?
Oh, sorry. That's a geriatric certified specialist.
And you have to take a test for that?
Yes, you do. So you have to take, I think it's like a 200 question test. I don't know if it's different from specialty to specialty, but the Physical Therapy Association basically has a certain number of areas that you can get specialized in. So because I love geriatrics, I also love neuro, so I thought about going down that road, but I see mostly geriatric patients, and you have to treat a certain number of patients within the population you want to become a specialist in. So I figured it'd probably be the easiest route in terms of my caseload to get my GCS. So you sign up for this super expensive test in November, and that really encourages you to study for it. And then you sit for it in between January and March of the following year. So it was stressful, but I love learning. I'm such a nerd, and I'm proud of that. And so it was fun to go through the CEUs for it and things like that to prepare. And what I would do is I would study in the morning before I went to work. And then I'd be like, oh, I can practice this on this patient today. So it was kind of a really fun way to remind me, in addition to adding to my education, of kind of all the things that we can do with the geriatric population, because they're super underestimated.
And very cool. It's almost like you're taking boards again, in a sense. I mean, that many questions and that long of studying for it.
It's like boards on steroids. It is so specific, obviously, and then at the same time, you know, with a topic like geriatrics, it's not just like just ortho, just neuro. It's the only thing you leave out is peds, basically. Cardio is involved, pulmonary is involved. So it's everything in PT school, and then apply it to 65 and older. So yeah, it was intense, but I would recommend people, if you're interested in a certain population, I think it's a fun thing to kind of pursue, even though it's scary, but it's also it feels good. It's a big accomplishment. And I think it'll be kind of cool when I'm back in the clinic full time to be like, oh yeah, I'm a geriatric specialist. Like, it just kind of, you know, it makes people feel better. Like when you can tell them you're a doctor, and they're like, oh, I thought you just under 6 months of training for this.
Yeah, so you've done quite a few kind of outreach programs for the community. Tell us a little bit more about, I think you've been working with some Parkinson's and you've taught some Tai Chi, and tell us a little bit more about your endeavors with that.
Yeah, so Parkinson's I did mostly as a student at Northern Arizona University. So Becky Farley, who created Power, is from Arizona. And so we kind of NAU benefited from that in a lot of ways. And so I didn't actually get certified in Power, but I do use Power all the time with my patients with Parkinson's, and I loved it. And it sounds so weird, but Parkinson's is a very rewarding thing to treat because those symptoms get better. And you see that as a PT, and they feel it as a client. And so it's so nice because it's a really rewarding thing to treat as a therapist. So I haven't exactly been involved in the Power community out here, or there's Rock Steady Boxing out here. I do recommend it to a lot of my current clients. And then, yeah, I also got certified to teach Tai Chi Quan, Movement for Better Balance, which is a 6-month course. So these poor people at the Heritage Park Senior Center did not know it was coming when they signed up for 24 weeks of a class. But they went to 24 weeks of a class 2 times a week. And this form of Tai Chi is all about, instead of finding your center and staying with it, it's finding your center and then pushing yourself outside of it so you can actually improve your balance. And it's, I think, one of the only ones that they've had scientific research studies behind decreasing fall risk significantly in this population. So it was really fun to teach, and so fun to be able to be a PT, obviously, but also go out in the community and touch more lives than you do just within the hospital. So I love that kind of stuff, doing that extra stuff.
So for that Power program, what is the emphasis on that? Because I've heard of Big before, which they emphasize bigger, larger movements because they have trouble with the amplitude of their movements. So how would you compare that to Power?
So basically, Power came out of Big. From my understanding, Big is very strict. So if you have a patient who's going through the Big program, you have to do A and then B and then C in terms of movements. And Becky Farley was like, no. Like, we got different patients. They have different styles or different stages of Parkinson's. I need to be able to use these movements however I need to use them. And so that's kind of how she adapted it. And so it's focusing on large amplitude as well as voice volume. So it's kind of a big and loud combination. But because she's a PT and not an SLP, I don't know if she's allowed to like add the loud part. But you do use your voice a lot, which I love too. And people just get so excited when they do it. Like, their face lights up, and it just makes you feel good as a therapist, because you do feel silly doing these moves. But then when your patient walks so much better, you're like, it was worth it.
And you're both doing it, so you can feel silly together.
Yes, I do get teased at work a lot. People walk by me and they'll just go, power up. But I love it. I'll take that.
People need energy, right? We need good energy when we're in a good work environment. So it's good that it fosters that environment.
When I've seen people do similar programs or the Big program, like out on the floor with other people, and it is like, louder, and they can see the person really emphasizing movements. And then I think sometimes it gets other people like a little bit amped up too when they're doing their stuff. Like, oh, that person's really getting after it. I think I'll try and do the same.
Yeah, exactly. It's a motivator.
Definitely. Okay, so what is something you've learned and you wish you knew sooner?
Ooh. I think a huge thing, and we were told this a lot in PT school, but I would say that I didn't really learn it until I was a therapist and probably a year in at least. That it's a good thing to say, I don't know. And it's a good thing to have patients who, I'll say the word scare me. So I'll have patients where I go in and I do not know what to do with them. And I am so nervous that I'm going to fail them or let them down. And so, but they've ended up being the best patients I've had and the best success stories, because it's okay for me to just say, I don't know how to do this, and bring in somebody to help me, or I'm going to look this up, or we're going to try this and I have no idea if it's going to work. And then you become this great partner with your patient or your client rather than being this authority. So yeah, I guess I wish I would have come out of PT school not feeling like I had to be so perfect as a therapist, just knowing that I'm going to make mistakes. And I probably made way more mistakes when I didn't admit that I didn't know what I was doing.
I think people appreciate the honesty. And then when they see that you're trying things and you're telling them, I'm not quite sure if this will work, but I really think it's appropriate for you. I feel like they kind of honor that, because it's like, well, this, even if I don't know, they're really trying, like this is specific to me. And I think that some people, they really like that approach and they really appreciate it.
Yeah. And I've totally found that to be true. And I think as a new PT, you don't believe that that's going to be true because you think these people want me to know everything, or they assume that I know everything, or you don't want to admit that you're new. But yeah, it's really, I think it makes the patient feel like they can be more honest with you in a way too.
Oh, for sure.
Can you tell us a success story that's like really, hit home for you, or like you found like is really special to you?
Yeah, so I had this one patient, young, which is funny because I think maybe not most PTs, a lot of PTs are more afraid of the older patient because they're outpatient or they're seeing young people. When I get young people in rehab, I'm nervous because I'm like, oh no, like they're gonna see right through all my dumb jokes and all the things. So she was young, she had a recent cancer diagnosis. And because of the chemo and all the treatment that she'd been through, she was just so weak, which is how she ended up in rehab. And when we started, she required 2 people to get out of bed into her chair. And she had 2 full flights of stairs because she lived in a tri-level that she had to get up. And we practiced stairs in like crazy amounts when we got there, but we had to just really build from the lowest possible level, rolling in bed. Just it was such a long process for her, but she was such a hard worker, and she was one of those that totally scared me, like I said, because she's young, and I was like, I don't want to fail her. But yeah, we had some moments where it was like, I think we can increase the step level, and come to find out, like, no, we can't. And she buckled right there in the parallel bars. We had some of those moments, but it was the coolest thing ever when we did that home eval, and she was able to, she took a couple steps and then she sat and she did tricep dips of those steps, and it was amazing, and she was so excited. And so just having those moments where you're like, you did something that changed her life it was so cool and so rewarding, and I think about her all the time.
Oh, that's good to hear. And it's something that yeah, that person has like a special place in your heart because you guys had that experience together,
Definitely. And it is funny how you get these certain patients that you don't want to let go of. So in our setting, we're lucky because we mostly see the same people, but every once in a while someone will get taken off your schedule. But she was one, I was like, no, I need her back today. So it was cool. We had fun too, which was awesome. And she just trusted the process, and that was nice too when you're in that really close relationship with somebody.
Speaking of close relationships, you recently started a podcast, right, with one of your best friends?
I did. So I am a co-host of a podcast called Trust Me, I'm Hilarious. And basically, we give unsolicited advice. So that's one of mine and my good friend Biz Hall's favorite thing to do, is just give people advice and make judgments. But so what we do is we either get a listener question in, or we'll look up like an old Dear Abby question or things like that, and then just kind of give our take on things. And we also every week challenge each other to do something that's kind of towards one of our goals. So I like to write. So Biz challenged me to start a novel, or she is someone that's starting a blog, so I encouraged her to do stuff like that. So it's like we encourage each other to reach our goals. She made me do a Pilates video, because I want to be a Pilates instructor. So it's kind of fun too to push each other. And yeah, it's been a cool project. I'm sure you guys have kind of felt the same way, where you start something that you don't know where to start, and then something comes of it and you're just proud of yourself. Like, this is cool, this is fun. So yeah, we have a good time.
Yeah, and learning a lot through that process, right? Whether it's how to figure out equipment, or how to phrase certain things, or even in computer programs. Like it's just like going through the whole process, I think, is the coolest part, because I think that's I think that, again, that's what's underlooked or overlooked sometimes, is the process is the fun part, right? The part to get to the end is good too. That's good to celebrate, but it's also all the stupid stuff you did in the meantime, right?
Yeah, like that's what makes your story part of it, which I think is really fun. And that's something, 2020 was the year I decided I was going to achieve all the goals that I ever wanted to, which obviously is laughable for a number of reasons. But I took this approach that I technically haven't read this book, but I heard about it. It's called Everything is Figure Outable. And so I took that mindset and just went with it. So I am practicing dog agility with Blue, and I taught myself how to play the guitar, and just things like that. Started this podcast with my friend. So things like that have just been good challenges. But like you said, you realize that you can do these things. There's, especially now, the internet, you can look anything up. So there should be nothing that can stop you if you want to do something. So it's a cool learning experience.
Yeah, totally. The internet's taken away so many excuses for people, because now, like, if you have internet connection, you really do have the ability to get the answers for whatever you need. And I also think too that a lot of people are really scared of making mistakes. And you mentioned that earlier when you're getting out of school, that you were afraid that people would figure out that you didn't know something. But you really do learn better. Like, people learn better from making mistakes, and that's how, like when you're recording the podcast, like, oh, maybe I should turn it on next time, like the interface.
Right.
Then you'll remember after the first time that you did that, like, oh, that's definitely first step. But you remember it better because of the awkward situation it puts you in. So.
Yes, I had one of the best professors in PT school, and her tests were so hard because it wasn't multiple choice or anything like that. It was essays. It was like 10 essay questions, and they would be things like, you're standing at the luggage return at McCarran Airport and you're reaching for your bag. Talk about all the systems that are contributing to you not losing your balance and having the strength to pick up your bag. So you have to write an essay about all these things. And that was her idea, was just like, you're going to mess this up, but if you can just think through it, you're probably also going to hit on some things where you're right. So it was cool. That's always stuck with me.
That's an interesting scenario, because if you are writing an essay about that, you can go into such a big rabbit hole about what's going on in your brain, and physiologically, systematically, all the things that are going on in your environment. Like, that's a deep essay. Like, you can write forever about that.
It took her forever to get our test back, and I don't I don't envy her grading those things, but she did teach us how to think. And like I said, she taught us that it was okay to make mistakes. So,
and plus two for that, it'd be different carrying your suitcase if you're coming into Vegas or leaving Vegas. We've seen examples of both.
How drunk am I?
Yeah.
We were at the airport one day, at the Las Vegas airport, and we see this guy kind of stumble over, and we're like, man, we're really worried. Like, should we help him? Like, it seems like he's like, like when you see those types of things, you get worried, right? Because it's kind of in our nature just to make sure, like, call, don't fall. That's the big thing. PTs, like, especially, we're like, don't fall. It's like terrible when someone falls, Yeah. And then we see this guy, and then we're like, okay, we kind of seek out the situation, and then we see the TSA agent just kind of staring at, like, looking at him, and then he just looks back. And then we realized it's happened multiple times. Like
Yeah.
you just like you can't get up from where he was like lying down. His glasses were all like,
So every time he would fall, so he had like a rolling suitcase with stuff stacked on it, and he had sunglasses on. But every time he would fall, he would knock all of that over and then get back up and like rebuild the Lego castle, and that would keep doing that. So it got to the point that the TSA guy with security like watched him do it a few times, and he's like, "All right, like 3's enough. Like, we'll have you come over here and wait for."
It's like one of those perseverance memes. Like that's that guy like rebuilding his luggage every time.
I think he just needed some time. That's the best thing for him.
Yeah, he just getting those mistake practice reps in. Yeah.
Exactly. I have taken a lot of flights, obviously, to Vegas just because I lived out of state for so long. And it always cracked me up coming into Vegas. Everyone's so excited and cheering. And then leaving, everyone's sunglasses on, quiet. No matter what time of day it is, when you leave Vegas, they turn the lights off on the plane. It's just always.
That's so true.
Yeah, like one of the best plane rides I ever had was going to Vegas. And then the people next to me were like super cool. And then we ended up playing like Mario Kart. Like I had this thing where you play Mario Kart on it. And then the girl, it was like a guy that was with the sheriff's department, I think. And then the girl did something else at the sheriff's department, but they didn't know each other. And that conversation started. And then she somehow figured out how to get free drinks from the stewardess. She's like, "Oh no, just tell him this. Just tell him you forgot your coupons." And I was like, "What? That's not going to work." She's like, "Hey," and immediately like, "Oh, hey, I forgot my coupons. Like, could I have this drink?" And the person's like, "Oh, yeah, sure." And then just started bringing drinks. Totally worked. Yeah, it was crazy. I think she said that she got them emailed to her, but she couldn't print them out or something. So they just like took her word for it. And then it got to the end of the flight, and that girl was like sleeping, like going into Vegas. Playing Mario Kart.
Awesome.
Yeah, it's a good start to a
Awesome.
Vegas trip.
Yeah, no kidding.
So you mentioned that you started learning guitar, you started a podcast. What else, or if you want to highlight something that you've been working on professionally, personally, physically, mentally, anything along those lines? It doesn't have to be all of them, just one of them that you're excited about.
So the podcast is definitely a big one. I've been on leave from work for the last month or so. So I did what's called a NaNoWriMo, and it stands for National Novel Writing Month, and National Novel Writing Month is actually November. But basically you write 1,667 words a day, and by the end of the month, you'll have a novel that's about 50,000 words. So I just did that in July. Super fun. And if you're interested in writing at all, I totally recommend it, because it was every day I'd sit down and I'd think, I got nothing. And then this story just connected. So super cool. It was a lot of fun.
What was your novel about?
So it is about this girl who kind of has had some struggles in her past. Her and her sister are from kind of this like rough, abusive family. And she ends up getting a job as a live-in caregiver at Merrill Gardens. It's a very realistic location. And she meets this resident there who has this story that he wants to tell, and she happens to be a writer and has been kind of looking for her big break, because that's always kind of why she loses her jobs, because she's so involved in her passion and she doesn't always show up to work, things like that. So this guy has been like falsely accused of murder, and he wants someone to hear his story, so he has someone that kind of like believes in him, and so they decide they're going to write this story, his story together, kind of a thing. And then her sister starts having these crazy dreams, like as she's like hearing about these stories and things like that. So they decide to turn it into this whole like serial killer story. And then this girl's mom ends up murdered. And she's like, oh my gosh, was that guy falsely accused? I don't know. So.
They can find this book on Amazon, right?
Eventually. That's the plan. Yeah,
okay.
I am going to submit it to a fiction writing contest, just because that was one of my goals for the year, is like write a book. So I'm like, why not?
That's good. That's quite a project to take on. I think that would be intimidating for sure.
Yes, it was. And right now I'm having a couple of people read it. And so I told Bryce the other day, I was like, actually, don't read it. And then yesterday I was like, okay, you can read it. So I keep going back and forth.
What program are you using to write that?
Google Docs.
Okay.
I'm very non-advanced.
Oh, yeah. Have you ever heard of Scrivener before?
I knew you were going to say that. Yes,
Yeah.
I've heard so many great things about Scrivener. And so I'll probably need to, before I submit it to the contest, I think I'll probably need to invest in that and get the formatting right. Because I've heard it does really cool things.
It helps a lot. It really helps organize your thoughts. And if you're somebody that, like, if you're writing something and then you come up with something else, you have places where you can put that where it's not going to get, like, you won't lose it. Like, you can really quickly go to something else.
Well,
You
that's
can like
awesome.
color code things. It's a pretty helpful program overall.
Yeah, I'll have to look into that.
And go ahead.
So what is something you commonly see in your practice that you wish more people knew?
That older adults are not fragile. They are freaking warriors. You should push your older adult patient way more than you think you do. So I gave a lecture at UNLV, not anything related to older adults. It was all about it was about scoring, like the new GG system, and then at the very end it was about rehab. And what I said to those students was, do not pull out that yellow TheraBand. Like, that older adult does not need that yellow TheraBand. Like, they've been through the war, at least one, like probably two, like maybe the depression. Like, they are strong enough for more than the yellow TheraBand. So I just always encourage people to really look at your older adult like you would any other patient. They're an athlete, they're a person, they need this strength probably more than they ever have in their life. So give that to them. And if you undersell your older adult, if you underdose them, you're actually hurting them. They need way more, so we can give it to them. They can handle it.
And I think a lot of them understand that too, intuitively. Like, they can tell if it was difficult or not. Like you said, they've already had all this life experience, and then you give them something and they're like, seems a little easy.
Yeah. I think honestly, probably most older adults that go to therapy don't understand why some people think it's hard. Because they're like, I don't have a problem.
Right.
So they just think they have to get through it. They don't realize, like, oh, this is supposed to be a really good challenge for me.
So what's something that you want to leave listeners with?
Ooh, gosh, so many things. I think one of the biggest things is just, like, know that you can do it. That might sound really cheesy, but just, like I said, everything is figure outable. You don't have to know it all to be able to accomplish things and do the things that you want to do. And just persevere. You can make it.
Very cool.
I love it. So Katie, how can people find you?
So I'm on Instagram in a couple different ways. My Instagram handle is happinessisblue with underscores between happiness and blue. But that's mostly my dog, which you can feel free to follow me on. And then TMIH podcast is our Instagram handle for our podcast, or tmihpodcast@gmail.com, or you can just email me directly. It's kamullen.km@gmail.com.
Excellent. And we'll include all of that in the show notes as well. But Katie, we want to thank you so much for being on our podcast today. And we're excited to read your book on Amazon one of these days.
Me too. Thank you guys so much. I really
appreciate it. Thanks, Katie. We'd like to thank you for listening to La Vida Las Vegas podcast. We hope you enjoyed the time with our guests as much as we did. It would help us out so much if you could share, subscribe, or review our podcast, or any combination of the three. Thanks again, and remember to take care of yourself.